Welcome to Automotive EV. My name is Peter Willing and thank you for joining us. Today is our 5th episode in our latest series of the battery supply chain. And we've 4 knowledgeable and great speakers today. And I can now hand over to Rich, who will introduce everybody and take over until the end. So welcome everybody, and the stage, floor, different office is all yours, Rich.
Well, thanks indeed, Peter. Yes, my name is Rich Wilkins, ladies and gentlemen, and I've been working with Kuehne+Nagel now for the past 15 years and within the automotive vertical for the past 10 years. So yeah, as Peter said, I welcome you all to our 5th session in the battery supply chain series, where the key topic today centers around sustainability and the sustainability challenge of the lithium battery supply chain. It appears that the transport and storage of batteries will never become a commodity for logistics purchasing. So we explore how the inbound supply chain of lithium-ion batteries have evolved over the past 3 years. So the key takeaways from our discussion today will be, what are the top supply chain requirements for battery manufacturers and what are their biggest challenges today? Is legislation an accelerator or hindrance? And which role does sustainable and traceable sourcing play in future? So with no further ado, I would like to welcome and introduce our senior experts from the industry. And I'd like to start with Louise.
Hello, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. My name is Louise Millerhofstede. I am client partner at Circulor. And yeah, my background lies in tech. So I've been very early involved in blockchain technology. Sort of when I still had to explain to people that blockchain is not Bitcoin and that there's actually a technology behind Bitcoin that can be used also in other sectors. And my background is far away from automotive. It's more in art history. And I've been looking at blockchain technology in the art industry. And that was very successful. Now it's a huge thing, but I've been too early. So I've been then asked to apply or to look into other industries, and then identified very quickly the energy sector and the supply chains as sort of like the best area of application for blockchain technology. And then I found Circulor, which was founded 4 years ago, and I joined 1.5 years ago now. So founding the perfect company that found a good application of the technology to solve real world problems with new tech. And this is me.
Great, thanks indeed, Louise. And over to you, Craig, from Britishvolt.
Hello, thanks, Rich, and thanks, Peter. Thanks for the invite for today. I'm really pleased to be joining you and hopefully sharing some of the experience that I've encountered in this area. I've worked in sustainability and environmental compliance all my working life, so not too many years to remember now, but a long while. I've worked as a regulator for the government. I've worked as a consultant and also latterly for private businesses as well, and obviously now work for Britishvolt as their head of ESG. But I guess in that time working across many sectors and seeing different insights into environment and how sustainability's developed in that time frame, and how external perceptions and the inputs from people and those sorts of stakeholders have changed as well. So yeah, it's been a good working experience, and now, as I say, working with Britishvolt and hoping to develop the battery supply chain activities with them.
Thanks indeed. And over to you, Vicky.
Thanks, Richard. Looking at the experience of other co-panelists, I look very new to the industry, but yeah, I'm Viktor Ravikumar, mostly known as Vicky among the closed ones. I'm a recent graduate from Kuehne Logistics University in Global Logistics and Supply Chain Management, currently based out of Hamburg, working for Kuehne+Nagel as a project manager of global sea freight intermodal systems and process. My previous professional experience before studying masters were predominantly in contract logistics under automotive vertical, and I was curious about how a giant automotive industry shift towards a new gen vehicles will affect the logistics and supply chain, especially with handling batteries. I'm really glad today to be part of this discussion alongside such dignified co-panelists and with you, Richard.
Good. Thanks indeed, Vicky. So, well, actually, my first question will stay with you because only recently you completed your master thesis titled The Rise of the Gigafactories and Their Impact on Business for Logistics Companies. Now, you wrote that thesis on behalf of Kuehne+Nagel. What was the problem statement of Kuehne+Nagel?
My thesis sponsor is active in the field of shipping lithium cells from Asia into Europe and into North America. Lithium batteries are heavy, bulky, and dangerous commodity, which leads into fact that the preferred mode of transportation is sea freight. Kuehne+Nagel has a significant share in shipping batteries with many announcements of gigafactories coming in Europe. The company wanted to identify the respective implications. In particular, they wanted to know how long the window of opportunity to ship batteries will remain open.
Okay, so before jumping to your conclusions and findings, Vicky, how did you start to seize the market and the opportunity itself?
We read so much about the end of combustion engine by countries or automakers every day. So I collected all the announcements from traditional car makers and EV startups, put together their production ambitions until 2030. Then I calculated the respective demand in gigawatt hour. In parallel, I calculated the supply from all existing and announced battery factories, also until 2030 in gigawatt hour. The gap in supply and demand indicated the market for batteries and opportunity to transport them.
Okay, so I basically judging from what you're saying there, that was like a simplified result of your findings, yeah?
No, the simplified results were the results while the demand and supply are rapidly increasing in Europe and to a smaller extent in North America. Both regions will remain dependent on sourcing their cells from Asia for at least another 5 to 7 years. Europe should be self-sufficient at least by end of this decade if projected capacities goes as per the plan.
Okay, thank you. So, Craig, over to you. Now, I was wondering, do you actually agree with Vicky's findings that it will take Europe another few years to fulfill local demand? And what is Britishvolt's opinion about that? But before you do that, can you please share of the most important parameters with regards to your company's investment into battery manufacturing, please?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, Britishvolt, we're a rapidly evolving company in the battery market. We've been around 18 months now, but in that time we've become a unicorn for investment. So we've been valued at over £1 billion recently. So a lot of expectations placed upon the business from a UK point of view in terms of the battery supply chain. We're building a factory up in Northumberland. We've got planning permission for that, and we're actually, as I say, building that now. And that's all in the space of 18 months. So it's all a really quick and rapid process around Britishvolt in terms of what we're doing to meet some of that demand that's not only just in the UK but wider afield in Europe as well. So I think we're aiming. Well, I know we're aiming. We're not. I think I know we're aiming to make batteries as sustainable as possible, and with the most positive social impact we can from those batteries as well. And that's some of the key criteria we're looking to manufacture and place in our business approach. So we've got a site up in, as I say, Northumberland that's going to be powered by renewable electricity and has good connections to ports and to rail to allow transportation and goods to be moved in a sustainable way. So all these things are a prime consideration in why we selected the site, but also important for future battery development. If I then start to maybe widen that to Vicky's points and his findings on his theses, I think yeah, in Europe we've got a handful of gigafactories at the moment. Probably you can count them on one hand in terms of ones that have got planning permission, none really that operational. But actually, when you start looking further afield to Asia, they're ahead of us because they've already got hundreds. So I think that lag, and I know from experience, Asia and China, I've been to the facilities over there. They've been doing this for 2, 3, 4 years now, and we're only just catching up in Europe. So there is that lag. I think we've recognised that, I guess, across Europe and the UK now, that we need to do some of our own development, and obviously Britishvolt's one of the companies that stepped up and is well advanced in that, in terms of how we can achieve that and support that and make that transition to local supply of batteries produced locally. And I think that's one of the challenges that we've got in doing that, is that yeah, there will be a time frame to do that, because the raw materials we need for the batteries are still coming from particular locations. So we need time to be able to transition and actually manufacture some of those materials in local positions to allow the feedstock to be ready then for our production capacity of our cells and batteries for the market in the local area.
Okay, thanks indeed, Craig. Now over to you, Louise. Yeah, thanks for your patience, because you've been hanging in there waiting, but
not waiting, just listening carefully, so all good.
I was going to say, as there may be some people watching today, but that don't know about the wonderful things that your company Circulor does. So can you please elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Circulor is a software business. We're very active in the automotive space. Basically, our mission is to make the world's most complex supply chains transparent, sustainable, traceable, and the automotive supply chains count to the most complex supply chains in the world. And what we do is we basically trace resources in supply chains, and not only that, we trace resources that change physical and chemical state. So there's a lot of track and trace out there, you know, DHL, trace your parcel, those kind of track and trace solutions. What we do is a bit more complicated, just because what I mentioned, we are tracking resources that change physical and chemical state. That makes us currently the most mature solution and a global leader in this very nascent space. We are doing this since 4 years. Yeah, as I said, for a lot of customers from the automotive space. So on the OEM side, there's Daimler, there's Jaguar Land Rover, there's Polestar, there's Volvo, there are others which are not under public domain. But also what is interesting, because initially you would think the OEMs are the ones interested in the sort of like upstream information from the supply chain, for 2 reasons. Responsible sourcing, but also to support their climate neutrality objectives. But then we see in the last year a lot of customer traction on the raw material producer side. So the nickel producers, the manganese producers, the cobalt producers, who actually want to position themselves sustainably and want to make a difference by proving that their product comes from a green source, that there's no child labor involved. And so slowly we're seeing the supply chain coming together, which was initially very downstream driven. So the OEMs, the battery manufacturers, Britishvolt luckily being one of our more recent customers, but also on the Asian side, so CATL and LG Energy Solutions, for example. So now we slowly see the supply chain growing together, establishing traceability, and yeah, that is us.
Excellent. So actually, it's interesting because you mentioned about Britishvolt there. So yeah, we understand now. Obviously, there is a relationship, and but can you tell us more about this?
Sure. Craig, do you want to go, or should I?
You go, and then I'll follow.
Okay. I'll just very generally, we will support Britishvolt in their ESG. Not only claims, but making ambitions, turning ambitions into actions, and making claims very tangible. And we do this by tracing the battery materials that will go into Britishvolt cells, but we also will go one step further, and we will start the journey together with Britishvolt at this point, so pre-production phase. And there's one very special thing about the collaboration with Britishvolt, and it is something that hasn't been done so far, and we are very happy to do this, because there are a lot of, and I'm coming to the point right now, there's a lot of cell producers who claim to do the greenest batteries, the most sustainable batteries, and maybe that is even true, but nobody is looking actually at the fact that there are massive factories being built, which is environmentally not so green. So there are currently like 33 announcements of gigafactories in Europe, which has a massive environmental impact. And what we will do with Britishvolt is not only trace battery materials that go into the cells, such as cobalt, nickel, mangan, and so on, and lithium, but also to track the most CO2 intense materials that will go into the build. So into the building, and this makes it very special, because sustainability in this point will not only be looked on the battery, but holistically, to say, what we do as a company, and Craig is the much better person to talk about this, we see sustainability as a holistic topic, and we want to tackle this also holistically. So this is very high level on what we'll be doing. There will be also the ESG measurement framework tracking, but maybe Craig, I'm leaving some crumbs also for you.
Yeah, me too. I'll add to that, Louise, and thanks for that connection. And yeah, we are working closely with Circulor in terms of what Louise has outlined. I think, as we say, for our batteries, we're in that fortunate position that we're a business that is starting up, so we can set systems and processes in place that allow us to understand fully and meet the expectations of customers. So we know that many OEMs are making commitments around net zero and reducing their footprint for the vehicles that they're producing as they transition to the electrified propulsion systems, because of COP and because of other drivers as well. But those commitments are coming out, and obviously as part of supporting those, we need to be visible and transparent in how we evidence the carbon footprint, or the footprint and the provenance of the raw materials that go into our batteries as well. So all those criteria and potential concerns that OEMs might raise because they've made commitments and they need to address, we want to satisfy as well, not just because they're asking for them, but because as a new business we want to be meeting those expectations, because it makes good sense to embed some of those requirements in right from the start.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. And a question for you now, Louise. Which role does sustainable and traceable sourcing play in the future?
Well, sustainable sourcing, taking this apart, sustainable and traceable. Yeah. Sustainable for very obvious reasons. Planet needs us, and electrifying cars is great, but it's also exchanging one problem for the other. CO2 intensity or emissions from the streets will be taken out, but will be shifted to supply chains. As we have a very high demand for minerals for all renewable technologies, such as batteries, but also solar panels, wind energy, for example. There's a very, very high demand for minerals, and extracting minerals, refining them, bringing them to the midstream, transporting them from one continent to the other, to the next one, is very CO2 intense. And that's why sustainable supply chains will play an even bigger role in the future as they are playing now. Traceable is another interesting point, because as I said, you hear the word quite a lot, traceability. Nevertheless, I feel like demystifying it is a good way to do it, because you are not only following things, you use basically technology that hasn't been there 5 years ago in order to solve problems that we tried to solve for a long time now but couldn't. And traceable could also be another word for verified. You know, once you can trace something, you have transparency over something, so you have visibility over something. And as soon as something comes in the area of, in the visible area, you can start controlling it. I mean, the supply chains by design have been very intransparent in the past. There has been an awful chaos and mess created, which has been carried on child labor and environmental crimes as well. And I think this is something which is not acceptable anymore, not only in end customers' minds, but also from a feasibility, technology, state-of-the-art point of view. We can tackle those challenges or those problems now.
Yeah, indeed. And Craig, you introduced yourself earlier as the head of ESG at Britishvolt. Can you please explain to us what ESG means? And is there a difference to sustainability, or is it the same?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the ESG, environmental, social governance, sort of covers 3 themes really now, and it's just a newer maybe terminology around sustainability. I think sustainability, that word can mean so many different things to different people. So the ESG is developed from it probably because it's maybe the need for businesses or for investors to evaluate better businesses' contribution towards sustainability. So the 3 pillars around E, S and G are there because now finance houses maybe and entities are able to put metrics against them and assess them. But actually also what it means is the businesses who are performing, and if I speak around Britishvolt, we've got ESG really embedded in our business. As I say, I'm the head of ESG. I've not been long in the business, but when I came, environment, social governance was really embedded in the business, and there was already lots of action there. My role's to corral some of that, but actually also structure it and set processes, procedures, targets and objectives within the business that then mean we're all working in an aligned fashion and actually performing to meet some of those objectives that result in improvements and priorities around those topic areas. So around climate change, around diversity of workforce, around operations and governance, and making sure we're compliant with the laws and things that exist and are continually developing. So I think ESG is just it helps to provide focus for businesses. It helps to report externally. As I say, people can view and understand each of the different pillars, but it also means that when we focus, we can pick the right priorities and affect our people, our planet, and then improve the business ethos and approach as well, and giving greater visibility out externally to a performance of a business. So, as I say, we've got this ambition to be really clear and transparent in our data and our information, and part of that is working with Circulor and the traceability of raw materials. If we can make that visible externally, then as schemes and systems develop to assess organisations and prove and reach for those proof points of how people are performing and meeting and not impacting the environment or improving the social ability and social mobility of people around where they work, then that's all important. So yeah, I think it's a slight different development of sustainability, but again, it's helping people understand and then allowing businesses to target how they tackle some of those maybe often nebulous interpretations of the word sustainability.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Craig. And Vicky, you did market research regarding electric vehicles and batteries. Did you find any relationship between battery and EV demand to sustainability?
Richard, customer behavior is one of the key factors encouraging electric vehicle adoption. Indeed, sustainability plays a big role in it. Like Louise said, that tracing is verifiable, which means it verifies whether it's sustainable or not. So there were many studies prove that there's a close association between environmental concern and environmental awareness of a consumer on a green product purchasing decision. It is also confirmed that EV purchasing decision of consumers involves a thorough consideration of environmental and human and social impacts of sustainable practices by manufacturers. So while I just reiterate what Louise said, that they track right from the raw materials. She said about the good sustainable practices, which also happens in the mining and all stuff. So people, because the consumers are more interested in it, so they just don't want to buy electric vehicle. Like they just don't want to transfer the problem onto another problem, but they want to see that it's a completely sustainable, even their manufacturers are producing it in the right way. And also legislation in EU, such as EU battery passport. This is also driving or allowing manufacturers to follow sustainable practices. Like when I was doing studies, I also read a good article which was dated in December 2020 by Circulor regarding the battery passport, and those are the best practices which has to be followed, and when it's been followed, so that the consumers also get to know that, okay, the product I'm buying is completely sustainable, not just I'm just using electrical without any tailpipe gas. Hence we see there's a lot of focus on sustainability by battery manufacturers, especially in Europe, right from the upstream of the supply chain. In addition, logistics service providers are also adopting sustainable practice to support them in the downstream of supply chain. Even at Kuehne+Nagel, we are working towards scope 1, 2, 3 of carbon emissions through our net zero initiatives. In a recent announcement, where Kuehne+Nagel and Lufthansa Cargo agree on exclusive partnership to promote CO2 neutral fuel, and also we are using LNG and hydrogen trucks to control road logistics emission and so on. So I would say this sustainability is actually driving a lot of demand of the batteries or in general electric vehicle.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Louise, over to you now. Do you think that today's technology allows for an acceleration of decarbonizing supply chains?
Yeah, I would even go one step further and say only now it is possible to look beyond your tier 1 and share information, data, that wasn't possible before in terms of like sharing data in a secure, governed way. Not to bore you with tech details, but two parties that don't know each other and don't trust each other can exchange information with each other without knowing who they are, and still technology can make sure that the information is correct and that it's valid. And sometimes those companies don't even need to see the information. They just need to know data has been exchanged in this bubble. There's a correct number, but I will never see which number it is. And this is the state of technology today. And then looking at supply chains again, I mean, of course, manufacturers know their tier 1s, but there's very little visibility into tier N. And that also means when we are looking into decarbonizing supply chains, we have to work together. We have to make traceability happen. We have to connect all supply chains participants with each other, who then take their CO2 intensities, bring it to the next one, summarizing them, bringing them to the next one, and so on and so on. So in order to achieve, technology is not the blocker. In order to achieve the decarbonizing supply chains is a change of mindset. Companies have to start working together. They don't need to trust each other. I'm always saying this, like you don't even need to trust each other, but start working together, because supply chains are too complex to do it alone, you know, and it's impossible.
Very interesting. Let's have a look at the end of life of an EV battery. I mean, what happens to the battery packs? Craig, what's your opinion about this?
I guess just to put it into context, I don't know all the people on the call, but obviously Britishvolt, we're making the little cells that then are bolted together, welded together, glued together, that then go into modules that then go into packs. So in an EV vehicle, you'll have a big battery pack that consists and comprises thousands and thousands of cells. So I think the difference is in the approach is actually what happens to the end of life of those battery packs on an electric vehicle, and that's the challenge that the EU battery regulations, which Vicky referred to earlier, are obviously developing. They're not formally released yet, but in there they're driving an approach whereby a certain amount of the cells has got to be recycled content, and that means obviously reducing the environmental impact of the raw material extraction, but it also somewhat contradicts maybe the legislation that's already out there from the EU about the waste hierarchy, where we should be looking to reuse batteries. So if you think about the battery from a car, it could be reused to do something else, because even though it can't power a car, it can still be used for a energy storage facility or something else, and still be used in that capacity. But the legislation on the waste hierarchy said we should be preferentially going down that reuse route, whereas the battery regulations, with the drive at the moment to improve and increase the amount of recycled content, there's a bit of a contradictory measure there, because we at the moment don't produce enough cells to allow that recycled content demand to be met, which will drive us to actually need to dismantle the batteries at the end of a vehicle's life and recover those raw materials. So there's a little conundrum there, I guess, in Europe and how they determine that legislation. But I think that one of the objectives is that, and we probably don't do it well enough across Europe and the UK, is actually capture the batteries at the end of life in the first instance. So every battery on a laptop or an iPad or an iPhone, I think in the EU study we were saying something like mid 40s to 50% of those batteries are actually recovered and recycled, and the ambition is to get up to 80%, so that then we can then recover the raw materials from those batteries, if the chemistry is right, to use them in the production of new lithium-ion batteries for mobility purposes. So yeah, there's a bit of a conflict there. The legislation's developing, and the regulations aren't necessarily fully finalised yet in terms of how we reach that recycled content. I think at the moment, because the markets aren't there to really drive the recycled content increase, lots of recycling facilities that are able to take the batteries down to these raw materials to then reuse them are located quite a distance away from where the use demand is. So that obviously means you're shipping potentially in the UK, for example, we don't have a facility that can recycle to those raw materials that can be used in batteries. So the materials end up getting shipped further afield into Europe or beyond, to then be recovered and recycled back. So when we're trying to make batteries that have got a low carbon intensity, you're already embedding a carbon intensity in there by that shipment of having to move the goods halfway around the world or less to be able to achieve that recovery. So one of the things we need to do UK-wise and Europe-wise is really, and what will happen as the volumes of batteries coming back increase is be able to capture that and then look to recover those materials and put them into use in new batteries that are produced, thereby avoiding some of those impacts where we're extracting raw materials from virgin mines, but actually having that reuse circularity, which is one of the ambitions and aims that we've got to do. We've got to make use of those end products over and over again. Hopefully that gives a summary of, I guess, my thoughts on it. But yeah.
No, that's excellent, Craig. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I've just had a look into the conversation just to see if anybody has actually, any of our viewers have actually raised any questions. I can't see anything as yet, but just wondering, in general, who is actually controlling the lithium battery market today and tomorrow? That's a question for Craig and or Vicky.
I mean, Craig, if you want to go, I just want to briefly explain my research which was there, and then you can continue on that. Yeah, I mean, it's like already Craig said it in the beginning. Asian markets are way ahead of European market for at least 5-6 years, and of course, with the number of volumes, with the global volume available currently is being controlled by Asian markets. At least 70% currently. It's going down. The European is picking up, but the majority still is with the Asian market as per the current data. But yeah, I mean, if there's any other point, Craig can correct me.
No, I think I tend to agree. Obviously, batteries that people are purchasing and lots of the cells that are being used in vehicle battery packs are purchased from overseas. They might well be locally assembled in Europe, but yeah, the cells themselves are actually generally manufactured in bigger volumes elsewhere and then brought over. So again, as we said, that embedded carbon is already in there in a product, and the drive by the OEMs and to reduce that carbon intensity is one where we need to be able to localize production in Europe and recover some of those materials and recycle them to help reduce that impact that we have and the demand we need.
Indeed. And as far as legislation, do you see that as an accelerator or hindrance?
You want me to start and then I'll let anybody else go? But yeah, I mean, I think there's lots and lots of evolving legislation out there, and I think it's obviously driving. It's driven by public requirements. It's driven by investor requirements. It's driven by other legislation as well. So I guess you get into relationships, but there's a plethora happening, and as we were talking around going down the supply chain specifically, I guess there's more and more requirements from the German due diligence legislation that's recently come out that is expecting more and more visibility right to the source of some of these materials, and I think that's not unexpected because our customers are wanting that clarity. So they want to see and know that we're not impacting the forests in Brazil, or we're not having other impacts on local communities. So that visibility in the legislation is tending to follow that. So I think it's not a hindrance, it's helping, and it's formalising some of the requirements that businesses are actually thinking about doing. And certainly, as I said, from Britishvolt's point of view, things we're doing and embedding our business now, even though we know the legislation isn't there. We want to be embedding that and making as much of the information visible ahead of legal requirements.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on to that, if it's a hindrance, or what was it, accelerator or hindrance?
Accelerator, yeah.
Okay, driver. Yeah, I mean, for some companies, of course, it's a hindrance. For those companies who don't have their supply chains in control, of course, that is a horrible scenario for them, that legislation comes into place, which now obliges them to start engaging with the supply chain participants. Of course, for Britishvolt and Kuehne+Nagel, it's a driver, because being good companies, finally having legislation in the back, because I mean, to be a good company means also to invest a lot of money into being good. And in order to use this sort of greener differentiation, but also to use this as a benefit for your products, for your company. Of course, it's really nice to hear that other companies need to invest money now as well in order to be good. And just to come back, because I'm German, so I need to talk a little bit about German legislation. Yeah, Germany is a big driver when it comes to those regulations and legislations. Vicky mentioned it before. Definitely the biggest one in the automotive space is the EU battery regulation. There has been, the battery regulation has been there since a very long time. It's not new that batteries have a regulation now, but what is very new, and this came, I think this was renewed in December last year. For the first time, they are looking not only at batteries and then their life cycle and what happens to them afterwards, but how they're being produced. And that is very interesting. And then Craig also mentioned it, there's recycling quota, and then year per year, new things coming into force. That means very early you have to disclose CO2 intensity of your supply chain of the cells. Then at the very later point, recycling quota kicks in. Then I think in 2020, correct me if I'm wrong, Vicky, is it 5? The battery passport actually comes into force. So this is a very big one. We are also very active in that field together with the European Commission at a consortium which has been formed around industry leaders in the automotive space to actually develop sort of like a prototype of the battery passport through German grant funding.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Louise. So do you have any other points that you wish to add? I personally don't have any further questions to raise to you, so okay. So so Louise Millerhofstede from Circulor, Craig Woodburn from Britishvolt, and Viktor Ravikumar from Kuehne+Nagel. We certainly thank you very much indeed for a very interesting and informative meeting today. Thank you, and thank you very much to all the ladies and gentlemen who have attended this session. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Rich, and what a really superb session. Thank you all very much indeed. One quick element from me, as we've got probably a minute or so left. How many gigafactories do we really need to satisfy the UK market? I'm hearing we need 5. Was that being optimistic, or is it pessimistic that we only need 5?
I mean, in a scientific way, if I want to answer it, Peter, it's not the number of gigafactories, what is the capacity of each factory. I think Britishvolt, if they have a big capacity, only one is enough. But yeah, the demand has to be equally supplied by the capacity of each factory, or it can be done by a single one. Craig would be a right person to answer right now.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the numbers. I think I'm trying to remember. If our factory at full capacity when it's fully developed is something like 300,000 vehicles, that's the scale of our factory. So yeah, but equally, we're not going to be necessarily selling all batteries or all cells to passenger vehicles. So yeah, I'm not going to say the figure you've said is incorrect or correct, but it's probably not that far off, yeah, in terms of the numbers, because yeah, as we start to transition into more and more electrical vehicle mobility, there'll be more demand for cells. So our cells won't just be in passenger cars, they'll be in other things as well, and other ways of moving people around. So yeah, at 300,000 vehicles we could provide, if at full capacity will be soon exhausted as if everybody moves to electric mobility.
Any thoughts, Louise, or whatever it's going to keep you very busy? That's...
Of course, the more the better. No, no, of course, I think the answers have been very good covered by Vicky and Craig. So we'll see is the answer.
Well, thank you all, and thank everybody for watching. Obviously, if you've not had a chance today, you've got the opportunity to catch up on our on-demand section. And also, if you have any questions, as all of our members are actually registered on the platform, you can ask them a question direct on the platform, so that we can all sort of keep in touch. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you for the next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, it's Peter again, and thank you for watching the session. Don't forget you can connect with all members within the EV community, send messages to each other, and start to build relationships for the future. Also, take a look at our supplier showrooms. Our partners have got lots of products and services that they have to offer, which again could be of benefit to you. Make the most of the opportunity, and thank you again for joining us.